My daughter's abandonment occurred 2 years after I was diagnosed with cancer. At the time, she believed I was too young to expect to inherit everything I have accumulated. I was diagnosed with colon cancer 7 months ago. It was detected during a routine checkup, and it was only at the initial stage. Despite the doctor's optimism, I was devastated. No one is happy about dying. I informed my daughter of the diagnosis, and she was traumatized, just like me. I have no one in my life except for my daughter, and likewise for her. She has no one but me. My wife is alive, but she is not. I am a single man residing with my 22-year-old daughter, Hannah. My wife and I separated amicably 14 years ago, after falling out of love. She relocated to Atlanta with her boyfriend, and I was left with the custody of my daughter, who was 8 at the time. Hannah has been a difficult child, and our separation did not go well with her. She became resentful of her mother because she left. After that, she never took her mother's calls. I attempted to fill the gap and raise her well, but I believe I faltered when I informed Hannah of my cancer. Her initial reaction was one of pain and hurt. We cried, hugged, and expressed our love for each other. We discussed our happy times together, including her graduation day, our yearly vacations, and hiking. She promised to support me and take care of me. I had not anticipated that she would eventually tire of me and abandon me. After 7 months, she packs her bags and leaves me behind, as though I were a pile of garbage. I have been nothing but supportive of her throughout her life, yet this is the response I receive. I understand that it is challenging for a young woman to care for her ailing father, but she did not have to clean my house. I had a nurse taking care of those matters. All I needed for my daughter was to be by my side. My doctor advised that I should either quit my job or reduce its scope to a minimum because the treatment would require a significant investment of my mental and physical resources. I informed my manager of this, and he was empathetic to my situation and released me from my duties. He said that I could resume them after I had overcome the challenges posed by the illness. I resigned from my position to focus on my recovery. Time for my recuperation is not a concern for me, as I do not have any significant financial obligations. I have already paid off my house mortgage. My daughter's education is complete, and I have no further responsibility for her. I have accumulated a substantial savings that should last for several years. Additionally, I have assets that I can liquidate in case of a cash shortage. I am therefore in a favorable position to manage the financial implications of my condition. My doctors were also supportive. Hannah was my main carer, accompanying me for chemotherapy and regular checkups. The chemotherapy sessions were extremely painful and exhausting. I was unable to move for a day or two after each session. I was therefore dependent on Hannah. I required assistance with basic tasks, such as obtaining food and medication. I procured a wheelchair to facilitate independent mobility within the home during weekdays. However, on some days, the act of entering the wheelchair also proved challenging. The treatment was mentally exhausting, as it was physically demanding. I was so weak that I felt my bones were about to collapse. This made me even more frustrated that I was struggling to perform the basic tasks of eating, walking, or using the bathroom. As the months passed, Hannah became increasingly irritable. She ceased visiting my room and ceased speaking to me in a normal tone of voice. Our conversations consisted of one-word responses. My daughter's lack of responsiveness was painful to observe. I had no other support in my life except for her. Our conversations helped me to forget most of my pain. However, when she became hostile, it was the worst possible outcome. I confronted her and asked her if she considered me to be a burden. She replied in the affirmative, which was the most heartbreaking thing I had ever heard. She expressed her fatigue at providing care for me. It is understandable that the preparation of meals and the management of my basic needs could be overwhelming for us, particularly given her age and the fact that young people tend to avoid those who are unwell. I informed her that I would be hiring a nurse to assist me. I requested that the hospital provide a house nurse for me, and they allocated a nurse with experience in the care of cancer patients. I had presumed that I had identified a solution to my problem, but Hannah remained irritable. She continued to exhibit symptoms of a cold, maintaining a distance from me and exhibiting a hostile attitude towards the nurse. I requested that the nurse refrain from interacting with my daughter, but Hannah perceived the nurse's presence in trivial ways. She even requested that the nurse refrain from touching the refrigerator or entering the kitchen. The kitchen was also a source of contention, as Hannah was apparently offended by the nurse's presence. After a while, it became evident to the nurse that Hannah did not like her. The nurse inquired about my satisfaction with her work, given Hannah's apparent displeasure. I confirmed that the nurse was performing her duties well and had no complaints. On the day the nurse departed in the evening, I confronted Hannah about her previous behavior. I had previously requested that Hannah refrain from interfering with the nurse's work, but her actions had now reached a critical point. I felt compelled to intervene to prevent her from quitting her job. When I informed Hannah that her conduct towards the nurse had been unprofessional, she became visibly upset. She asserted that I was exaggerating the situation, claiming that she did not stink. She further stated that I was attempting to teach her basic hygiene etiquette, which she found offensive. I was visibly upset and yelled at her, stating that she was a nurse and had been taught and trained about hygiene. I informed her that she knew more than I did and that she was not qualified to give her hygiene lessons. She proceeded to scream and rant for approximately 10 minutes, accusing me of making her life miserable and holding me responsible for her mother's abandonment and the lack of a typical childhood. I had become accustomed to such outbursts from her, as she had engaged in this behavior on numerous occasions. However, what was particularly distressing was her false allegations. She proceeded to accuse the nurse of being a piece of crap who eats, looks, and smells like she knows why the nurse is protecting her. She then alleged that the nurse must have realized that I was a soft target to manipulate and obtain my wealth because I have no family to inherit my property. I cut her off, expressing my bewilderment and frustration. The argument escalated to the point where the woman stormed out of the room and left after an hour. I could hear her yelling from the living room, and she was packing her suitcases and leaving the house. She told me that she was leaving for my benefit and that I could do whatever I wanted with my mistress. She advised me to spend my money on her before she died. I refused. I would like to express my sincere condolences to you, your family, and your loved ones. I am deeply saddened by the recent loss of your loved one. I would like to take this opportunity to share my personal experience with you. When my own mother was dying, I was not able to stop her from leaving. Her words broke my soul, and tears welled up in my eyes. I sat near the window, sobbing and seeing her stuffing her suitcases in the tank and driving off. It has been weeks now since she has left. I feel worthless, and I have failed as a father. Her words hurt me more than anything else. The illness has caused me to question my relationship with my nurse. I have been unable to comprehend how she could have made such an accusation. It has left me feeling as though I have failed as a husband and father. I feel as though I have wasted my life and that I have failed at everything. I have no motivation to continue my treatment. I would like to thank everyone for their love and support. The post has received a great deal of attention, which I had not anticipated. I was looking at this space as a form of therapy to improve my quality of life. I am grateful for the engagement with my post. Even the smallest act of kindness is meaningful to me. I would like to provide a brief background about Hannah. One individual inquired about my 22-year-old daughter's living arrangement and whether I had provided her with therapy during her early years. I did provide her with therapy, and I am grateful for the opportunity to share more about her. To regulate her emotions, I engaged in counseling, spent time with her, and took her out. I never became romantically involved with another woman to avoid any potential turmoil in Hannah's life. Hannah did not accept our separation well, becoming aggressive. I took her to therapy, which helped her to an extent, but her aggression often relapsed. She dropped out of college. I attempted to persuade her to continue her education, but she refused. She did not continue, however, stating that she wished to embark on a venture of her own, namely the establishment of a salon. I provided her with the necessary funding for this venture, which was named the Spa Salon. There, she met a man whom she claimed to be her soul mate. She desired to marry him after a relationship that had lasted less than a year. She was only 19 at the time. I advised her to spend more time together before making any commitments, but she proceeded as she wished. Her marriage did not succeed. A year later, she returned to my residence. Her husband was a poor choice, as he lacked employment and lived off her salon income. When they depleted the salon's investment, they were forced to sell it. He subsequently left her. She did not receive alimony. The husband was financially unstable, so she was left with no income and no husband. I had to support her. She has been residing with me on my income, and now that I am terminally ill, it is unclear whether she will remain with me. Update 1. I would like to thank my friends for their continued support. I have been unable to update this account for several months, but I am grateful to have the opportunity to connect with you all on DM. I am happy to have made genuine friends through this platform. This month, I had my last chemotherapy session. I have been diagnosed with cancer. I am grateful to the medical facilities for their excellent care following the conflict with my daughter. My condition deteriorated significantly following this incident, and my doctor recommended that I seek counseling to help me cope with the distress. This proved to be an effective approach, as I was able to express my emotions and gain a better understanding of my situation. The session with the counselor was an opportunity for me to express my distress. It was a relief to be able to talk to someone after a long time. I even told her that I no longer wanted to continue my treatment and that I was considering letting myself succumb to the disease. However, the counselor helped me to cope with my depression and hopelessness. I was even asked to have a full-time nurse because I was living alone and was growing weak. The nurse would be able to take care of me in the event of an emergency at odd hours. I offered double pay to my existing caregiver to accommodate me full-time because she knew my medical history and my diagnosis. I did not want to replace her. Had she been there, she would have picked up on me for having the nurse full-time. I was offered a full-time nursing position because I was living alone and was growing weak. The nurse would be able to take care of me in the event of an emergency at odd hours. I offered double pay to my existing caregiver to accommodate me full-time because she knew my medical history and my diagnosis. I did not want to replace her because she would have picked up on me for having the nurse full-time. It is disconcerting to consider how she accused me of something that I could not have possibly considered. I have moved on from my daughter, and if she can abandon me at my lowest point, I should not be thinking about her either. With the support of my doctors, counselor, and nurse, I focused on my healing. My nurse used to take me for chemotherapy, and I realized that more than physical, I used to feel mentally drained. Earlier, when Hannah used to accompany me, she was constantly my daughter's frequent outbursts, which were more distressing than the physical fatigue I experienced during treatment, led me to question my resilience. I lost my hair and weight, yet I remained optimistic and determined to overcome these challenges. While I acknowledge that Hannah's departure may have been a positive turning point, I initially felt a sense of loss. However, with time, I began to feel a sense of relief. I had been holding on to her until then, and her departure made me realize that I had been prioritizing her over my own well-being. She was free to leave, but by doing so, she taught me a valuable lesson. I had become overly reliant on her, neglecting my duties and allowing her to exploit me and walk over me. She had become a punching bag, and I had allowed it to continue. I had become a mere bystander, taking it all without protest. I am no longer willing to accept this. I am looking forward to rebuilding my life. I had considered returning to work, but now I believe that I do not need to. I have sufficient savings to make the ends meet, if necessary. If I were to run out of money, I would take. I am currently employed in a basic position at a supermarket. My current objective is to regain my weight and strengthen my muscles. I have commenced with walks and will subsequently commence jogging and running once the breathlessness has subsided. It is a challenging process. I still experience fatigue after performing the basic chores, but I am taking it one step at a time. My nurse is still present, but I will be releasing her once I have regained sufficient strength to be able to care for myself. It has been 2 years since I was diagnosed with cancer. During the 2 years I spent doing what I enjoyed, I came to realize that I had never truly enjoyed my life. I had worked hard all my life to provide a good lifestyle for my daughter during my time off from work. I spent this time with my daughter in order to fill the gap left by my mother's absence. I avoided serious relationships in order to avoid the potential complications that might arise from them. I engaged in casual relationships with women, but eventually, I stopped. I refrained from dating for the aforementioned reasons. After my daughter had matured and I had the opportunity to spend time on my own, I did not pursue romantic relationships. I was still concerned that it would not be a good match with Hannah, given that she had always lived with me, except for the 10 months of her marriage. I was aware that she was not comfortable with the presence of another woman in the house, given her experience with cancer. I began dating without much expectation of success, initially experiencing some awkwardness and humor. I soon realized that the rules of the dating game had changed significantly. Today's woman employs a vocabulary and jargon that I had to research using Google Dictionary. After meeting about half a dozen women through this dating app, I found someone with whom I could connect on a deeper level. I did not engage in sexual intercourse with any of the women I met through this dating app. Instead, I went out for dinner and coffee with a woman named Syra, who is in her early 50s. She has been cheated on by her husband on numerous occasions. Despite her willingness to give him numerous chances to improve, he has not. Subsequently, she relocated and raised her daughter as a single mother. Now that her daughter has left for college, she is attempting to establish a romantic relationship. It was her daughter who encouraged her to seek a partner. I occasionally experience feelings of jealousy, though I do not view them negatively. I wonder what I believe that my daughter did not reciprocate my love. After seeing her for 6 to 7 months, we decided to move in together. Did we take this decision too quickly? I do not believe so. I am able to live for at least another 60 years, and I do not think I have more than a couple of decades before I am laid to rest. We had the option if she was amenable to the idea of moving in with me, but I was more inclined to move in with her. She has an artistic inclination, and she has aesthetically designed every aspect of her house independently. It would be difficult for her to leave her craft behind in a house that has been on the verge of falling apart. I was unable to perform proper maintenance. In addition, I have no positive memories of the house, which I would prefer to leave behind. I also needed a change of scenery, so I sold my house. I received more cash for it than I needed to retire in luxury. Why would I not sell it to Hannah, who abandoned me to die, but all this transpired months ago? Why am I updating now? Last week, I saw a ghost, or rather, my daughter encountered a ghost. I was relaxing with CRA when I received a call from Andy, the new owner of my house. He was enraged. He informed me that a woman had trespassed on their property and the woman in question created a disturbance and even engaged in a physical altercation with Andy's girlfriend. According to Andy's account, a young woman gained access to the premises of his house without permission and attempted to gain entry. She was in possession of a house key, but was unable to unlock the door. In response, she began to bang on the door with great force. Andy's girlfriend opened the door and loudly demanded that the woman cease her incessant pounding on the door. In response, the woman hurled insults at Andy's girlfriend, calling her a dying man's whore and demanding that she vacate the premises. Andy's girlfriend was initially confused by the woman's behavior and attempted to clarify the situation, but the woman was unresponsive and continued to berate her. The woman loudly denounced Andy's girlfriend, calling her names and demanding that she vacate the house, which she claimed belonged to her father, who had passed away 2 years prior. Andy's girlfriend attempted to clarify that Andy had purchased the house and that no one had given her the house. She also stated that she was unaware of the woman's name, as they had not been dating at the time Andy purchased the house. Andy was not present to clarify the matter. His girlfriend called him in a state of distress, but by that time, the woman had already departed, vowing to return with her companions. Based on Andy's description of the woman, I recognized her as Hannah. I inquired if I knew the woman, and Andy replied that she was my daughter. My son was aware that I would be upset by her presence, and indeed I was. He became enraged and demanded that I visit the following day to address the situation. Otherwise, he threatened to call the police on her. I advised him to call the police and obtain a restraining order, but subsequently realized that this was my responsibility. I was tasked with resolving the situation and preventing further distress. I arrived the following day and awaited her arrival. She arrived accompanied by 2 of her inexperienced companions. She proceeded to shout from the front porch and break the flower pots that were kept there. He opened the door with a baseball bat in an attempt to intimidate them. I advised him against this course of action, but he was reluctant to comply. The baseball coach was demonstrating his abilities, and I was unsure how to intervene. He stepped out, and before Hannah and her friends could charge at him, I stepped out. Hannah froze, and her friends also stopped, appearing to be in a state of shock. She muttered with a blank expression, "You're alive? You were thought to be dead." I was taken aback by her reaction. The expression on Hannah's face was particularly noteworthy. It was as if she were experiencing a sudden realization, her face taking on a pale hue. She then directed her attention to Andy and his girlfriend, inquiring about their identity. I informed her that they were the new owners of the house, to which I had recently sold. She had the audacity to inquire as to what had been done with the money. She also asked if he was going to die. These statements were hurtful, but no longer caused him pain. Instead, he found himself laughing at her expense. He informed her that he would use the money for the rest of his life. He then revealed that he had been diagnosed with cancer. "I am currently unemployed and have no intention of providing any financial assistance to you. I have already spent the money I had accrued from my previous employment, and I intend to continue spending it on myself until it is all gone. You are on your own. You have been operating under the assumption that your father is deceased, but that is not the case." She was in tears and instructed her friends to leave, stating that it was now. Meanwhile, I informed Andy that I would be departing. In the event of any further disturbances, I advised him to contact the authorities and request a restraining order against her. I relayed that Hannah had pursued me, imploring, "Dad, don't do this to me. I'm your daughter, your sole family. You cannot abandon me." I responded with a smirk, "Sure, I can abandon you the same way you did." I then sat inside my car and drove off. Typically, in such situations, I experience feelings of remorse and sadness. However, on that day, I felt a sense of liberation, satisfaction, and even happiness. I believe I made the right decision. I should have taught her a lesson long ago. Thank you for putting up with me. I am grateful for all the feedback and support I have received on this forum. I hope that nobody else has to endure the same difficulties I have faced. I am currently working on a new narrative. In the second story, I discovered that my wife had been unfaithful and had left me for a wealthy man. However, it later emerged that he was already married. I had recently ended a long-term relationship. I had been in a committed relationship with a woman for several years when I met my current partner. The dissolution of the previous relationship was not a traumatic experience. We simply grew apart and had differing aspirations for our lives. Several months later, I encountered a woman named Katie in a coffee shop. We engaged in conversation and found we had a mutual interest. I informed her of my recent separation from a long-term partner and that I was not yet prepared for a serious relationship. She respected my decision and waited until I was ready. I was initially quite impressed by the woman's willingness to wait for me. I believed that she was a suitable partner for me. However, this assumption was not borne out by subsequent events. Nevertheless, at the time, I considered her to be a good match. We proceeded at a leisurely pace, and within a year and a half, we were moving in together. 6 months later, I proposed, and we began planning a wedding. The wedding proceeded without incident, and we were financially stable at the time. In terms of our wedding, I had a decent job, and so did my wife. While we might not have been as rich as the 1%, we could be considered middle class at the very least. Our relationship was also good. We had our ups and downs, but the two of us truly did seem to be creating a great life together for the first 3 years. Everything seemed great until my wife started working on a particular project at work that was difficult. This was what I thought. At the time, my wife was working long hours and spending a significant amount of time away from home. I missed her, but I understood that she was busy at work. When I had an important project at work, she supported me. I kept asking when she would be finished, but my wife kept extending the deadline. This has been going on for nearly 6 months now. It made no sense why she would still be spending all these late nights at work. It got to the point where I couldn't. I was unable to ignore the discrepancy, so I accessed her last laptop, which she had brought home from work. Her home laptop did not contain any pertinent information. This meant that the evidence must be on her laptop. I was unsure of what evidence I was looking for, but I was certain that there would be something on her laptop that would explain the situation. I found several emails from an email account that I was previously unaware she had. A multitude of emails were discovered, shared between an unknown male. These emails were of a romantic or sexual nature, which only served to confirm my suspicions that my wife was indeed engaging in an extramarital affair. Upon her return from purchasing dinner for us, I had the laptop in plain view, with the emails readily accessible. My wife initially appeared to be in a state of shock, but I seized the opportunity to confront her. I inquired of my wife as to the identity of the individual with whom she was engaging in an illicit affair. My wife reacted with indignation, claiming that I had no right to access her work laptop, which she asserted contained confidential information. I was tempted to laugh at her hypocrisy, given that she had previously used her work laptop to communicate with this individual. I persisted, and she eventually admitted that the man in question was a former client of the office with whom she had continued speaking even after the contract ended. This led to a sexual relationship, which I discovered when I conducted further inquiries. I inquired as to whether she had feelings for him. She replied in the affirmative. My wife subsequently informed me that she intended to inform me of her intention to divorce me so that she could pursue a relationship with this man. Upon conducting further research, I discovered that this man was extremely wealthy. I use the term wealthy to describe a person who possesses a great deal of material wealth, as opposed to someone who is merely affluent. My wife had always been fond of the finer things in life, but it appeared that she was attempting to achieve a higher socio-economic status. I was unable to comprehend the transformation in her personality. It was as if she had always been this way, but I was unaware of it. My love for my wife blinded me to the truth, whatever the reason. I was aware that our marriage was over, but my wife initially fought it. I believe she only did so because she felt it was her duty to do so. The divorce took a long time to come to fruition, but in reality, it was just a matter of months. My wife and I went our separate ways, and I was left alone. The wife had already identified a potential partner on social media, stating that she was engaged to be married. In reality, the man she was with was already married. He informed her that he was a widower, but his wife was not deceased. Instead, she was abroad, caring for a family member who was ill. Upon her return, the situation escalated. The engagement was called off, but this was a moot point given that her partner was already married. They could not marry anyway. After that, her social media posts seemed to become quite erratic. She was posting about how she had lost her soulmate, but what I think she was upset at losing was her wealthy partner. This man was going to help her get to that lifestyle much faster. Meanwhile, after my divorce, I reconnected with a girl from the past whom I had originally cut things off with just before meeting Katie. The two of us were friends for a while before we realized that we were finally in a place where we could give this a second try. She knew about my divorce and was sympathetic when word got back to my ex that I was back with this particular woman. She went ballistic and started blasting me all over social media. Following my divorce, I re-established contact with a former acquaintance. We had previously been friends, but our relationship had deteriorated just before I met Katie. After our divorce, we resumed our friendship and eventually decided to try again. My ex-wife was aware of our relationship and expressed her disapproval when she learned of it. She became enraged and began posting negative comments about me on social media. The media, in particular, devoted a great deal of time to criticizing me in my app on social media. As a result, my wife's job at the company was placed in jeopardy. As a public company, any content she posted could potentially be used against them in some way. I chose to temporarily disable my social media accounts because reading her posts was causing me significant stress. I am aware that she has been reassigned to another department and is no longer earning as much as she once did. This is entirely the result of my ex-partner's actions. Had she been content with her circumstances, this situation could have been avoided. My current girlfriend and I are discussing marriage, but we are taking a cautious approach. I am determined not to act without full certainty, and to avoid repeating past mistakes.